podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey, before we get going, do me a favour. Head to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review if you like the show. And if you hate the show, a 5-star review and send us some abuse. We're all right with it. Just hit the 5 stars. And now on with the podcast. Welcome to No Question About That. This is the Mailbag pod. I'm Ed. I'm with Wayne today, who has promised to grow his hair out until United win 5 in a row. Is that right? How's it going, Wayne?
The discernible difference will be notable to everyone. Yeah, the old egg will be staying intact can win 20 games in a row and still be shiny and round.
It's a great gag for a podcast, isn't it? Visual gags always work very well in audio format. All right, we've got the usual mixed bag of stuff today. No United game. Well, United women beat London City Lionesses. That's 7 wins on the trot.
Yeah.
Still notice people moaning about Mark Skinner in my timeline on Twitter. People find something to moan about all the time. He's not well liked, Mark Skinner, but he appears to be doing a good job. We don't have many questions about the United women, but we will get to stuff about the ownership, stadium, Michael Carrick, the team, potential transfers, some Pokemon silliness as usual. No questions about Phil Jones, which we had for many, many years. But there you go. Oh, it's been a little while, Wayne. What have you been up to? Launched any new books? There's normally one per week.
No, I've been working on a book all throughout January. It's been nice to burrow myself away, do that side, sort of like such a hodgepodge kind of end of year where I couldn't get a groove going in writing, but I've just been able to sort of hide away and do that this month.
All right.
These last sort of 6 weeks or so, and it's been really good. So yeah, mostly done that, come up with a few new ideas. Well, ideas that I had the genesis for, but I wanted to flesh out. So I've spent a lot of time doing that, and it's been nice to sort of create things again. Sometimes when you get bogged down in a manuscript, and this is privilege of a writer speaking, because it's a great thing to do and I love doing it. But that's the only time where it feels like it's work. Do you know what I mean? You get into it and it's like, I've got to finish this thing. And you say the advice I give anyone who ever asks anything for what it's worth, when they say like, oh, I want to know anything about writing, is finish a project. Finish a project, because the first time you do it, it feels like you've accomplished something massive, because that's the biggest roadblock anyone needs. The biggest roadblock I ever had when I was writing was to finish the first thing that I was doing. And then it felt like such a milestone that I could do it again and again. But when you have had the privilege to write as often as I have, there is an element of it where it does become to feel like work. And that's where I was for a little bit. And so when I've had these other projects, like I said, to sort of like move on to and look a little bit at the creative aspects of it, it's been nice to sort of revitalise some of those kind of things. Even though I don't feel sound like it at the moment, I've had a really good period of getting down to that kind of thing. A lot of creative stuff at the moment. So yeah, it's been very good writing about things that I really enjoy writing about as well. A period of United's history that I really like and haven't had a lot published about. So it's always nice to go there. And actually today I was looking at the comparison between Brian Robson, Paul Ince and Roy Keane when we were playing in 93, and how different and all similar they all were. Just because I was interested in the period and I was looking at it, and it just struck me how they are very similar as players, all three of them, but they all had such notable differences, and how incredible it was that we had 3 of them playing at the same time. Even Robson at 36, 37, that we had the 3 of them who were so dominant personalities playing him. Can you imagine? You kill for one now.
Yeah.
That's it. They shaped the entire team around them now.
It would be good, wouldn't it? Stick those 3 in midfield. It's one of those things, counterintuitive things that you can never kind of prove, right? How would a player from X era work today? Because football changes and adapts, and it's obviously a very high-paced game today, but they get up to their levels of fitness they needed. Well, maybe not Robson. He liked a, pint or 2, didn't he?
I think he
Well,
would.
actually, all 3 of those liked a pint or 2. It didn't seem to do them any harm.
No. Do you know, it's interesting you mentioned that, just to divert from the subject. I saw a great thing. So we're talking about cross-generation, and obviously this is the week where James Milner equalled the Premier League appearance record.
Yeah.
I saw the link. There was Milner in his first game or his first start, or one of his first games, he played against Nigel Winterburn, who was 38, and his career started all the way back in 1983. So you've got two players there who go back 43 years. What I found really interesting about this is how would you describe those players? Upper mid-table players, right?
Yeah, and Winterburn was in a successful Arsenal side for a long time.
Yeah, so maybe even higher than that because Milner's won championships as well. So let's say like championship contending, higher, like top four kind of side for 40 years. That to me suggests, I know there are diet and athletic considerations to take into account, but players adapt through those kind of things. And those two players, to go for 40 years through two players, tells you a lot about the nonsense that people speak about. You know, they talk about it in like the terms that a team from now would batter a team from 2008 based on athleticism, which is a complete nonsense. It must be because that kind of disproves it, because a player can play over that period of time and be of that level of which they were. And neither Milner nor Winterburn, you would say, are remarkable players. They were squad players in those teams. So I think it proves a point that you can go back and apply the diet of things. I don't think there's tremendous changes that say that a team from this era would wipe the floor with
there's been changes in diet and sports science and training methodologies and stuff like that. And tactical evolution has happened since football began, right? Yeah. That's always been the case. So players would, of course, adapt. I suppose if you had a time machine, you just transplanted a team from the 90s into today's football, it might look very different. But, there's a fun one for someone on AI to put together. Yeah. All right, we've got some questions. Why not? We've probably got too many to get through, but we'll do our best. All right. Anthony says, at which point do we accept that this ownership lacks the means and will get us seriously to get us seriously competing again? And the main focus is on stadium regeneration, cash grab. Is there a way out? Well, there's about 6 clauses in that question, Anthony. Do the ownership lack the means, Wayne?
No, they don't. But
they lack the will.
No, I don't think they do. Well, the majority ownership, Glazers, they don't have the means nor the will. But with Ratcliffe and the injection of capital, that's the angle I'm taking on this. Yes, they've got the means, and yes, they've got the will to do that. But the regulations and the motivation to wipe out a debt, the obligation, do you know what I mean? Those kind of things, those are so add-ons to a question with many clauses, as you already said there. I think and we've spoken about this so many times, that the millstone of the debt refinance again this week, that's taken us to taking us up to the middle of next decade. Says that doesn't give an indication that the Glazers are ready to sell their shares anytime soon, which is a big concern when we've been banging this drum, or certainly I have, for the last year and a half, that the biggest indication that we needed to see after the Europa League final, when we thought we were in some kind of disaster, which we were, was some kind of map out of that, with the debt being the biggest issue. If the debt's not there, it doesn't really matter what kind of regulations are put forward, FFP or PSR or any future kind of things like that, because United are one of the best placed clubs in the planet to circumvent all those kind of things. Not in a bad way, but they're just so financially powerful, like Real Madrid, that they would have to find a way. Like Real Madrid's way of getting around it, La Liga wasn't pulling in the same kind of revenue as the Premier League, so their kind of way was making sure that they tapped up Bellingham and Mbappe years in advance, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, so that they could get those players on for relatively cheap. Mbappe and Alexander-Arnold. No, but the other two for peanuts, basically, on the when it comes to transfer fees. So they had ways of getting around it. United have got ways of getting around those kind of things because they're still competitive. But if you remove the debt, their ability to match those top clubs is never going to be a problem. It's only going to be a problem when it comes to the fees, like the hidden fees that no one talks about with Haaland. Like the fact that we're all meant to believe that he's on 300 grand and this spent 70 million on him. And that's it. That's the end of the argument. So those kind of things I don't think hurt United, but the debt massively does. And until we get some kind of clear indication on that, and like you've said so many times, there's no obligation or no motivation for Ratcliffe to do that while it's not his
He's
club.
not owner.
Why would he do it? So,
well, I mean, as part of that partial takeover agreement, he put $300 million in. That was for a 2 and a bit percentage points of equity. It's very hard to see him doing that again because the Glazers didn't pocket that cash. They own those shares, right? So if Ratcliffe wanted to put more cash in, he would rightfully say, hey, I need some equity as part of this. I mean, he could do it as a loan, but it would be charged market interest rates because the Premier League financial regulations determine it because City won that court case last year before. So it's really hard to, while the ownership structure is the way it is, it's hard to see that debt being paid down. Yeah. Someone would have to fully own it, really, to have the motivation, financial motivation, to go and think about it. We just don't see how a path out. The sales agreement, as I've said many times, kind of hints at, but doesn't give you any promises that a full takeover was in the works. Ratcliffe certainly bid for majority ownership, bid for all the A shares. That was not forthcoming. The Glazers didn't want to sell. Would they do so in the future? Well, that kind of lockout period ends at 3 years. That would make that's when you kind of guarantee a price. I always thought between 18 months and 3 years after the initial purchase, there would be some movement in that equity arrangement at the club. We've gone past 18 months. We're actually are we about 2 years now?
Just gone 2 years since the announcement. It was just Christmas, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's really hard. Like, the key factor is in any ownership changes, do the Glazers want to sell, right? That they have control. So if they want to sell, that is the thing that would allow more cash to be injected into the club if Ratcliffe or another party wanted to do it. Last point, then we'll move on. Stadium regeneration. I don't see it as a cash grab. I know this kind of thesis has gone around on social media. I don't understand where it's come from. The club owns certain amounts of land. The rest of it is not club owned, and it's a regeneration project. So the club are not going to be building 15,000 houses and profiting from it. And certainly the owners aren't. Only some of that would go towards, it has to be football related for it to go towards football related costs. Anyway, I just dismiss that as a kind of conspiracy theory. We can say whether we like the idea of a new stadium or not, you know? And like the likelihood is it would be very good for United financially. Look at what Real Madrid and Barcelona are doing. That is not a statement about the history associated with Old Trafford and whether it's right to raise it to the ground or not. But anyway, so quite a lot going on there. Let's move on. This is even more polite. Hans Bubby says, is Sir Jim Ratbag a massive bell end? Can his reputation recover? Should we let someone like this raise Old Trafford? There you go. Is he a massive bell end? Well, I mean, I wrote my piece on my newsletter and did an extra pod with Tom. I didn't like what he said at all, personally, about colonialism. Like anyone with 3 points of IQ can do some reading on the awful damage that British colonialism did abroad. That is not what's happening. Britain is not being invaded. You can have an immigration policy debate, but this is not a violent invasion, suppression of the native population. So I thought that was a really awful way of putting it. Is he a ratbag because of his ownership? I mean, it's not gone well, has it, for the last 2 years? Are we seeing light at the end of the tunnel? I mean, we had all that financial rearrangement, which I think in the end will serve United fairly well from a financial point of view. They stripped the costs right back. It had a massive human cost with 300 employees leaving, price rises in tickets, movement of people in the stadium to make room for VIP packages, some really dodgy decision-making around rehiring Ten Hag, then hiring and then firing Amorim and Ashworth and so on and so on. It's not been a stable period, but we do have an org chart that makes a lot of sense now. The finances are in a better place than they were. It's not good. I mean, United dropped to 8th in the Deloitte money table. It'll tell you where we are relative to our peers now. That the financial power you mentioned, not quite what it was. Real Madrid are making 500 million euros a year more than us now. You know, the gap has widened. We will, in the next Deloitte Money League, probably drop behind Tottenham. I mean, that's for one season only, presumably.
Yeah.
So it's been a really difficult and chaotic period, I'd say. I don't like the guy personally, but I would say medium term, we're in a slightly better position than we were. Is that good? I don't know.
And most of that's based really on the injection of 300 million.
Yeah. We'd be in a really bad position without that, yeah. I mean, it's about 50 million a year of costs that were stripped out. Of course, he blew that, or United blew that by not making the Champions League this year. And there's a lot of wasted on Ten Hag and Amorim and Ashworth and hirings and firings.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that you didn't mention, but we have talked about before, is there's going to be a change of the way that the club is. We're going to modernise it, and it's going to be a different style of play, and we're going to tell you what that is.
Yeah,
they've learned
that didn't happen.
No, well, it did, and they've learned the hard way that they can't do it. And I don't know if this move to Carrick or whoever comes next is sort of like an implicit admission of that. We'll find out. We'll find out if they go to another manager who goes 3 at the back. I would suspect that the next managerial appointment or notice of the Carrick appointment will come without the bells and whistles of this is going to be a change of way or talk about modernising. Nor will they go down the road of saying we should respect what we've inherited, but that will be something that they've already learned. Like you, I'm not a fan of the things that Ratcliffe said. I've got friends on both political sides, so I'm not, and family, and I don't want to go down the route of offending anyone. I don't agree with what he said for all the reasons that you've said it. That's my own personal belief on that. But you've said before, when Ratcliffe was close to being appointed into the position that he's in, or acquiring the relevant percentage ownership to get there, that there are no good billionaires, and you're not going to agree with the politics of the people who go into roles there. And we knew that that was going to be the case with Ratcliffe. We already knew that from the state of play with Ineos and what they stand for. So none of what he actually said is a surprise. You're just disappointed that he said it in the timing in which he said it. What I will say, I say this all the time, particularly with the owners. I've said it with the Glazers in the past, and people get frustrated with the way that they're representing Manchester United. And yes, I share that. I agree with that. Separate the individuals from the institution, because they are custodians of. I know Andy Mayton wrote a piece in The Athletic about them being a custodian, Ratcliffe being a custodian, and that's the point. And I've said it so many times before. They are custodians of this. They don't represent it. They do in terms of being a figurehead, but they don't represent the culture and the identity of what Manchester United are. Nor do they represent the political identity of the club and the past of the club as well. So the thing I want to say with this, just as an addendum before we move on, is there's a large media reaction praising Guardiola's reaction to what Ratcliffe said. They say, I don't know if there's this kind of engineering going on where everyone thinks Guardiola's on the way out, so they're championing him a little bit more. But he's had divisive political views in the past, and he's never been pressed on them. There's significant questions to be asked about the ownership of Manchester City and Newcastle United. And if we're going to start putting... United are going to get that. They're going to get it. Firstly, Ratcliffe did it himself. He put himself in under the microscope, so we've got no one else to blame. And I'm not saying because of that, let's do some whataboutery and point the finger elsewhere. What I am saying is United got it in the neck, and United got it in the neck to the point where everyone was forcing United to come out with a statement, and they did react with a statement, very blasé, very sort of non-committal to what they were saying. But it was a statement nonetheless in which they were forced to put out. You don't see that kind of pressure applied to City and Newcastle, but you would. True. But you would if those kind of states were owning United. We'd be under constant pressure. So while I'm saying definitely I do not agree with his political views, and we knew that ahead of time, what I will say is sometimes still be grateful for the fact that it's that crap and not as crap as it could be if we were owned by one of the states, and the kind of press we'd be getting in that respect.
I think that's a fair way of putting it. Yeah, the microscope is much larger at United, and Ratcliffe, I don't know. I'd have thought by now he'd have learned that his words carry a hell of a lot of weight and travel very far. I mean, obviously, he's 72 years old and he has certain views. I think the very bitter irony of him being a tax exile in another country.
Yeah.
I wonder whether his fellow residents of Monaco think he's colonializing them. All right, we'll move on. Make MUFC great again, says, did Jason Wilcox really overstep his responsibilities in challenging Ruben Amorim? I mean, I kind of think this is the point of a director of football. We weren't in the room. That's what I'd say. We've had briefing and counter briefing about what those meetings what actually happened. You know, the club briefing was Amorim was a baby, he threw his toys out when asked a simple question about would he move to a back four instead. That's not what Amorim put out. I mean, we saw his press conference when he said, I'm the manager. I don't know. I think that's part of the role of a director of football, isn't it? It's not that he would force Amorim. If he really said you have to move to a back four or we're going to fire you, I think that would be overstepping his bounds, because that's not the role of a director of football to do the tactics. If it's, are you sure this is working, mate? Do we want to think about another road here? That's perfectly reasonable, I think. That's what Deco would do at Barcelona and so on and so on. So yeah. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, it's an interesting one. I think Wilcox himself at the recent AFMOP dinner, for Former Players Association dinner, actually came out and said this. He said that he does get too involved when it comes to this.
Because he thinks he's a coach, yeah.
Yeah, so I've got, he thinks he's the manager. He can think he's the manager sometimes. So I've got every reason to believe that he probably did overstep, and Amorim reacted accordingly. That's what we saw played out in the press conference before and after the Leeds games. So, yeah, did he overstep in terms of the nature of what that relationship's meant to be? You're probably right, Ed. It probably does have a fair point. That's the position that he's in, to have those kind of conversations. I would go back to this point I made earlier, though, is that when Berardi and Wilcox made this appointment in the first place, they did it championing the fact that they were going to be moving to a different style of play, that they were going to move to three at the back. Players were brought in, the recruitment was forced around that. Dan Ashworth was fired on the back of these headbutting decisions, all these kind of things. So we can't absolve, I know the idea is to champion Wilcox as the man who fired the gun, basically, and saved us from the mess that we're in. But no, he was responsible for putting us in that mess in the first place, or equally responsible with the decisions made by other people. He's definitely not the one held accountable by the club or by Ratcliffe and Berardi, because Dan Ashworth was the man made accountable for the Ten Hag mess. And what happens next after that it remains to be seen how much Wilcox his influence is there, because we'll see what happens with the Carrick appointment, non-appointment, because Carrick's on a hide into nothing anyway. He's going to be called a yes man, right? It's already been said.
If they do what they said they were going to do at the beginning, club style, top down, we have a vision, we're going to bring in the coach that suits our vision, kind of like for better or worse, what Chelsea have decided to do. They've appointed someone who does not have the experience in the Premier League to have that job, really. But they've decided they've got a vision for the future and they're going to slot in a coach to execute on that vision, for better or worse. That's what Ratcliffe said in that interview in his first week of ownership that United were going to do. Now, if they did that with Amorim, they, as you say, they decided, well, we're going to move to a back three, we'll organise recruitment and data and scouting and the coach around that. That's what we're going to do. I don't know whether that was true or not. It wasn't clear that they actually said this is club vision. I suspect they might have just thrown it out and picked who they thought was the best man for a job without having that top-down vision. So, if they have a top-down vision for the club and the club style and stuff like that, and Carrick fits that, and this is a very long interview process, right? 17 games of interview with Wilcox at Carrington watching the sessions, then Carrick gets the job as long as it goes well enough, right? Which it appears to be doing so far. If Carrick wins 15 out of those 17 games, United finish second or third or something like that, there'll be a massive clamour for him to get the job on the basis of him doing a good job. If they had a different vision for the coach, Carrick wouldn't get the job anyway, right? You see what I'm saying? They would be like, we have a vision for the club. Carrick doesn't really fit that. He was always an interim. Great job. Well done, Michael. Brilliant servant to the club. You're welcome back in the director's box any time. And we're appointing, Julian Nagelsmann, pick a coach, whatever. And that will be a really key test to see whether they are this kind of thing that they said, this modern football outfit, or whether they just go for whoever's available. If they appoint Oliver Glasner, I'm on the pitch with a pitchfork.
But interestingly enough, then, what would be your, from that position of knowing the difference there, would you feel more assured if they did go a different direction to Carrick? Because then it would at least show that they had the conviction of what they originally said.
Well, if that was the basis of the appointment, if they just went for a big name because the big name was available, then that wouldn't reassure me, really. I wrote a piece for backers on Substack yesterday, like ranking at this point in time on Monday the 16th of February, ranking my managers. And I still think I'd like Nagelsmann to be the man, but Carrick could change my mind on the basis of he does a really good job. And the big question that everyone had when Carrick joined about his style of play was, were United going to be any good at breaking down low blocks? Now, the first time we faced a really low block in West Ham, we were not very good at breaking them down. Does that prove that he's a bad manager? Absolutely not. It was one game. United felt very flat. They played 2 games in 3 days for like the first time in weeks. That could well have been the issue rather than the tactical side of things, So there's time to prove that he is the man for the job. And also the market's changing. Tuchel has ruled himself out. Ancelotti has ruled himself out. I think a bunch of the managers in the Premier League already, so Marco Silva, Iraola, Glasner, for different reasons, I don't think would fit at United very well. Or there's no provable case you could say they would definitely fit.
Yeah.
Great job with Bournemouth. Great job with Bournemouth. What does that really mean for a side that's likely to be in the Champions League next season? So, and then from abroad, like who's the name? I like what Hoeneß is doing at Stuttgart, but Bundesliga to Premier League, young manager. We've been there twice in recent times. Hasn't worked out. Not Bundesliga, but youngish manager outside the Premier League. So I think it's a difficult choice. For me, the 2 outstanding candidates are Enrique and Nagelsmann. Enrique looks like he'll probably stay at Paris, although it's not clear. I know they were interested in him before. Nagelsmann is contracted with Germany through to 2028. Could be Carrick gets the job by default. And maybe he fits the vision and maybe he does a good job. Who knows?
The one thing I would say with that, I know you just said it just to complete the point. Let's not... I said at the start when we were looking, and I've said this throughout, when we appointed Carrick or when we were looking at Solskjaer as well, and I was more with Solskjaer, I'll admit, on this, but Carrick's won me over in a different kind of way. I place tremendous value on knowing the club, and I know that there's a lot of people saying vibes, blah, 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 and inexperience and PE teacher, all that stuff will come out as soon as we start losing games. It will. But I place so much value on knowing the club. We've been down this road for over a decade, and we've seen the most experienced managers, the most successful managers come into this job, and the best period that we've had in terms of the club feeling like it should do in terms of stability and results, because we finished in higher league positions under Ole, was under Ole. I'm not saying he's a great manager. I'm not saying that his faults didn't have an impact on where we ended up. They did. His limitations were there to see, and they probably did hold us back. But Carrick's not Solskjaer, and he does have the backing of, or he has the value of his experience at Old Trafford, which is a massive thing.
Allowed him to hit the ground running, didn't it?
Exactly. And when you look at a momentum, I've spoke about so many times on this podcast, is so important in sport. When you look at that as a value, and you look at the value of any other manager, you are looking at, I know this sounds like reductive reasoning, and you might lose your lid at me on this one, but every manager is in their environment. And Nagelsmann, great manager, he's still in his environment.
Totally fair argument. It's totally fair argument. There would be risk.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that there isn't risk with Carrick. There's tremendous risk. Mm-hmm. But what I actually think this value of knowing the club, knowing United, bringing that kind of stability in there, I think there's probably more value in getting Steve Holland, as stupid as it sounds, getting him tied down to a long-term contract alongside Carrick, getting the right people around him, making sure that there's an experienced head in there that's not undermining him. And, like when Brian Robson and Terry Venables co-managed for a bit.
Yeah.
Or when Gerard Houllier came in to co-manage with Roy Evans and you knew that he was edging him out. No, if you get an experienced name around Carrick, great, as long as he's in the director role alongside Wilcox. So if Wilcox is the man, then fair enough. I just think right now, when we talk about the value of what it is to have that experience of being at United, I think that that's as much value as anything that any other candidate can bring to the... If they said, this is the most impressive thing I've got, I don't know if it's more impressive than what Carrick's got, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Steve Holland, by the way, widely respected in the game. People don't like him, so I hear. I think he's not a particularly warm character. I think he's got a provable track record of being a very good coach.
Yeah.
And what we don't know about Carrick is he's one of the world's great thinkers about the game, right? Is he got that extra 5% that he can innovate? We don't know yet. Middlesbrough had to do a very specific job with resources that were sort of mid-table in terms of budget in the Championship, and he got them into the playoffs a couple of times. And in the end, the steam ran out. They sold all their attackers, and it changed the vibe around the club. And he had his 2.5 years there. Didn't quite work out as he hoped. But I think, we've had him for 6 weeks now, a bit more actually. And he has had a very positive impact on the club, allowed him to hit the ground running and so on. Anyway, Joey Mangini says, is Michael Carrick a combination of Fergie, Pep, Saki, Michaels, Jesus Christ, Cruyff, Busby, or I get ahead of myself? Yes, well done, Joey. All right, we'll move on a little bit. Random name 99 says, how long until Carrick regresses to the mean, crashes back to earth? I mean, we don't know. I mean, the West Ham game, it's interesting that United struggles in that game were what people analysed about Carrick's game model before. But again, you can't isolate that. No. United looked tired to me, and I don't think that had anything to do with game model. Sushant, friend of the show. Well, actually, so is Joey Mangini and a bunch of these other people. Other managers you prefer over Carrick, Tuchel and Ancelotti are out. Well, I've said Nagelsmann. Enrique is a risk because he's obviously a brilliant manager. Look what he's done with a very young side at Paris Saint-Germain, but he does want a very high possession side, and we'd have to change the squad quite a bit to fit with that game model. It's just true. We would. You got any favourites outside of the names we've mentioned, other than Michael Carrick or Ollie or bring back Fergie?
No, I am just with... The only one that I would really entertain is Luis Enrique, but I think it's because I love him as a character.
Amazing personality as well, yeah.
Ancelotti, because of the experience that he has, but I just don't think he'd fit. But Enrique there's something about him that I love. I just don't think he'd fit with United. I just want to go back to that other... So, to answer the question that you asked there, no, Carrick's the name that I'm in on. It would have been Ollie, but we wouldn't have known how that was going to turn out. I want to make two very quick points. Just the first one on Ollie, because the question that was asked there, where you just didn't let me answer.
Sorry. I was just rolling a few into one.
I know, because I waffled on for the last one. But unfortunately, that's what the price that you pay when you ask me to come on it.
It's all right. I'm going to play you back at 1.5 speed.
Carrick, how long until he regresses to the mean? He talks about West Ham. I still think, and I wasn't on for the post-West Ham game, I will say, I think there's value in that game. I think exactly what you think we struggled against the low block. That problem was when Carrick was on the staff with Ollie as well. So we had that same problem there, and that's what's continuing all the time. But we did find a way, and we did get a result. So let's remember that. We're not always going to do that. Let's hope that that's the first step of that not being a problem, that next time we face it, we look at the freshness of the side, we look at the team combination, we say, well, that's not a problem anymore. It was just that we were tired and the different issues.
Yeah. I did think before that game that Brian Mbeumo through the middle against the low block where he doesn't have space to run into was not the best choice, and moving it around with Sesko up front as a focal point would have been stronger. But he's had a lot of loyalty to the players who've been in the team so far, Carrick, and They served him pretty well.
You couldn't criticise him for that as well. They've earned their chance to play and to disappoint, and that's what happened on that night. And he might change it up for the Everton game. Very quick point on how long until he regresses to the mean. Well, we don't know that.
We don't know what the mean is.
And I don't know what the West Ham game is evidence of yet. We won't know. We talk about the values of draws in momentum. I think it's a good point because of West Ham's resurgence in form and the fact it was a last-minute equaliser.
Yeah.
We won't know until that goes on. We'll only really have a proper sample size at the end of the season once we have a couple of defeats in there. Hopefully we won't get them, but if we probably will. And then how we react to them and how Carrick reacts to them. If we see a proper, stable reaction or an inspired reaction is one thing. And finally, very quickly, on Ollie, but it's a point made about Carrick in the environment that he's in. Ollie's derided now, right? People say, oh, he failed at United. He didn't fail at United. We finished second in the league. Came in from Molde, where they're a Norwegian provincial club. They've done very well under his management mainly. That's not evidence of anything, right? It's not evidence of success or failure. So let's say he might as well have come into United having no club experience. From having that to managing the biggest club in the world to having the best league performance of any manager consistently since Sir Alex, the results, it doesn't matter about how it ended or the poor runs of form that were there when we thought he was going to get sacked at various points. The results are indisputable that they were the best results that we've had in league performance consistently since Sir Alex. To have that level of performance, and I think if City hadn't been bankrolled the way they've done, there's every chance that we've won a league title in there as well. To go to that level of performance, so then now render him as some kind of a joke that he can't get a job.
No, I know that is ridiculous, yeah, and he was very unlucky at Besiktas to get sacked. He did the same thing there, immediate turnaround in results, and then the chairman of Besiktas lost his mind and sacked Ollie after a Conference League qualifier went wrong. And undoubtedly the best performances at United since Fergie have been under Ollie, and he was a kick away from winning a European trophy as well.
And I just want to put, that's not a point about Ollie, really, it's a point about Carrick, because what I'm trying to say is, again, it's relative to environment. I'm not saying Ollie didn't deserve to get sacked at Besiktas or that he's not found his level or whatever, but they talk about him as a joke or that the idea of hiring a United stalwart is a joke. But the results were there, and we're talking about serious results and United having serious performances, and we are there at the moment with Carrick right now. We might not be there in the long term, and it might turn out to be a disaster, and he might be the antithesis of what a football manager is meant to be. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Manchester United wasn't. He was a serious manager, and his era at United, I'm not saying it's the greatest era since sliced bread or that it would have definitely gone on to be successful. He probably deserved to be sacked in the end. But I just think the way that people run over that as if it didn't happen the way that it did, I think people need to have a hard look back at the results and the performances over the last 15 years and look where we were the most impressive. I'm talking seriously, Ed, to look at that and go like, no, actually, we do ought to pay a little bit more respect to that and to not dismiss the idea of Carrick based on that, which is what a lot of people have done. And I think it's really short-sighted.
Yeah. Different world and the different characters.
Anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah. All right, a few questions on Bruno. God damn it, Brian says, if Bruno leaves after the World Cup emotional hangover, where do we even start recreating him in the aggregate? Nicholas says, 100 million offer comes in for Bruno. What do you do? Hannes Abraham said, if Bruno leaves, who replaces him in the current system? Well, I mean, if we're to believe the stories that he has a clause in his contract that if a non-Premier League club comes in, it's 65 million. I don't know if that's true. It's not been confirmed by anyone, but it was certainly reported. I think in The Athletic, amongst others. You can't recreate the numbers for 65 million. I mean, we've seen Florian Wirtz was double that, right? Going to Liverpool, and he's taken 6 months to kind of get into stride, and he looks like a flat track bully at the moment and not doing much in the big games. So this is really difficult. I don't think you can just replace him like for like, and you would end up trying to replace him in the aggregate through different types of players. But you would lose the world's biggest chance creator. You just can't replace it. Me personally, I wouldn't take any money and just let him run his contract down, because it's just so short-sighted. I thought last summer everyone was like, let's sell Bruno and we can buy these other players.
No.
I mean, you just can't replace the numbers. So
No.
There's no way of doing it. So you'd have to believe that we would manage to get 2 players that not only replaced the numbers, but made the team better as well. And that always felt like a very long shot to me.
Yeah. First of all, that player's not out there. Second of all, is he within the walls at Old Trafford? Probably not. Now, we've seen Cunha. I'm high on him. I think he's great. He's had a dip in form. His influence on the team might well prove to be fantastic. It will never be the same as Bruno Fernandes. And I've gone on record. People have criticised me for it. Because I went out and said very early on that Cunha is the best player that we've signed since Ferguson retired. Everyone came at me with Bruno. I'm not disagreeing in terms of contribution to the club. I never would. What I meant by that is individual quality. That they've got such a different kind of quality. Cunha is he's a maverick. He's absolutely fantastic. But he's not consistent at the moment. Hopefully he'll prove to be, and my words won't prove to be idiotic. He'll never hit the numbers that Bruno Fernandes did. I've not appreciated Bruno Fernandes enough. Even if I'm standing by what I mean in terms of individual ability with Cunha, what I'm trying to say with Bruno is that you couldn't replace him. What we're talking about is under £60 million. Let's be realistic. That clause is probably in there, and it's probably the case that 6 or 7 European clubs would be quite happy to pay £60 million for a player of that kind of relentless consistency. For all of the little petulant nonsense that you get with Bruno, for all of the wastefulness that you get, there is so much consistency in there that everything's worth carrying. And if he's not in there, we have seen the evidence when he's not in there, and when he's not in the right position, the ability of the team to generate the kind of chances or the quality of chances or the consistency of chances just is nowhere near the level. When he's been back in his normal position, United's flow of football is as transformative as it was when he first came to the club. And people don't have long enough memories to remember Jesse Lingard and Andres Pereira trying to moonlight as a number 10, or even Paul Pogba in there. And Pogba created a lot. He had his one game where he had 4 assists, so there's a lot of creation in there. But it was nowhere near the relentless consistency of Bruno. So if you say that 60 million is over 3 years, 20 million in a year, what are you getting for that? You're not getting anything near it. So let him run his contract out, let him see the rest of his career at United, and hopefully at the end of it, there's a league title or another major trophy there for him.
Yeah, I think that's the most sensible decision, is just to retain him and even extend that contract, because you just can't replace it. Cunha, I love watching him. He just wouldn't replace the numbers.
Nope.
But if you did it another way, right? There's a scenario in which you move Cunha to number 10. He's a ball-carrying number 10, not a chance creator. And you bring in a different player on the left-hand side of that 4-2-3-1. Now we're not thinking about a 3-4-3, thankfully. And you replace the goals and chances from there instead.
Yeah.
Ben Truman says, if we're in Europe, 3 centre midfielders won't be enough. How realistic is it that signing 3 midfielders given the budget constraints? And I think that's based on Casemiro leaving, and we're probably selling Ugarte because his time has been a failure. And that would leave Kobbie Mainoo as the only senior centre midfielder. Could we do it 2 signings and say Jack Fletcher being the 4th midfielder or something like that, or Jim Thwaites comes through or whatever, right? We fill out the squad of young players. I mean, if you're in the Champions League, that doesn't feel realistic. If you're in the Europa, it does, right? So I don't know. What do you think? Do we need 2 or 3 midfielders in the summer? And is it realistic to sign that many?
I think we need 3. Speaking about if Casemiro was gone, but Ugarte as well. I think we need 3 in there. Kobbie's obviously done fantastically, and you want to make sure that you get the right profile of player to complement him and to enable him to take his next step, because there's so much more to come from him as well. I think they're gettable, but they're just not all going to be Adam Wharton, Elliot Anderson and Carlos Baleba, whether or not you'd even say Baleba anymore. But those, they're not going to be those 3 players. It's going to be hopefully one of them, and then more sensible names to fill it out. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think those names are probably gettable. You just need someone functional in there. I mean, like, I'm not saying Sofian Amrabat was the answer. It most certainly wasn't. I'm not saying Marcel Sabitzer was the answer. He most certainly wasn't. But they weren't bad squad options. So if we'd had them in there, you would have been saying, oh, well, they're capable to take over if you needed a League Cup game or you needed a Europa League game, like I said, or you needed a substitute to come on for 30 minutes. They weren't disastrous in the same way that Ugarte's profile is so limited to what he can do in United, even in this system. Don't play a way that would suit him because they don't switch to a 3 in midfield because we don't have enough bodies for that. So Ugarte can never sit back in the 3. You know what I mean? To sort of see a game out, and we never just switch the formation a little bit to that. I think it's doable. I'm with you on saying that I feel like his progression's not quite there, that he'd be there next season in the squad rotation yet. If he came in now and started getting game time, maybe. I just think that he feels like he's a season away from that. So my inclination is that we need the bodies that the question asked. We certainly do need that. Whether or not I think it'll happen in one window, I doubt that.
Feels like a stretch. I mean, It'd be good if they could identify a brilliant young up-and-coming midfielder in the 20 to 30 million pound bracket that we're not thinking of yet.
Yeah.
As well as 2 big names. That kind of squad composition would make a lot of sense. And you're right about the profiles. They've got to complement Kobe. Tonali and Anderson, I'm not saying either of those are realistic. I think probably they're not. Would complement in terms of, I think, the profile. Neither's a pure 6, but you'd have the right kind of blend in midfield. Blaber probably doesn't. They're both ball carriers. Blaber makes more tackles. He's had a stinker of a season. Maybe that knocks 50 million off the price. I don't know. He was better against Liverpool, although they did get tanked in the end. So it's a tough one for the club. I mean, I presume now we have this amazing org structure that we've talked about previously, that they have been thinking about this for some months, but Champions League, no Champions League certainly makes a difference in terms of the amount of money they've got to spend on players and how attractive they are.
It does make me laugh, though, that like Amorim is hired, Amorim is sacked, Carrick is hired. No one knows if he's going to be the permanent manager. Whoever might be the manager in the summer. We've got 3 or 4 different combinations there of events. And yeah, it's always Elliot Anderson. He's wanted by whoever the manager's going to be. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he's wanted by everyone at the moment.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The word on the street is that he's going to City, but we'll see whether that's true or not. Surinder says, if Højlund goes and Xerxes stays or leaves, which realistic striker do you buy? We definitely need another one. Oh, God, this is just, it's too many players to do. I mean, United haven't traditionally done like 8 signings in the summer. So, I don't know where Xerxes fits at United, even in this system. Like, he's not really a striker, is he? Is he Bruno's replacement, one of the wide players' replacement? There's Mount as well. There's a good question about where Mount fits. Is it worth paying that much? I mean, he's the 3rd highest wage earner at the club. He'll be the 2nd highest wage earner at the club after Casemiro leaves. To be Bruno's understudy doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Højlund's gone as long as Napoli qualify for the Champions League. Not obvious that they will. It's really tight there in Italy at the moment. They were champions, of course. He's doing all right. Højlund's not great. Is it like scoring 1 in 3, something like that, a bit less. He didn't play very well against Roma against the weekend. No. I don't think United want him back.
No.
I mean, I guess he could sit on the bench and be an option if we have to. That's an option. I don't see a scenario in which Xerxes stays. I think they probably move him on. You know, he's got his qualities, hasn't he? But I don't understand I don't understand why we bought him, honestly. What was the profile we were thinking of there? He just seems to be a player who'd work at a slightly slower pace of game.
Yeah.
Italy suited him.
No, it's interesting. I don't think there's a future for those. Definitely not Højlund, and even less so Xerxes in terms of ability, because there's an argument to say Højlund would do better in this system because he's a more out-and-out traditional number 9. We know the profile that he has, and there's better chance creation around him now, theoretically at least. Strange to me that Xerxes didn't go out on loan. I guess they'll try and get him football where they can. And Chido Obi, he's in there. He's got to be around the first team next season. He's got to be for his development. He can't turn out to be like so many of those strikers that we've had, like Joe Hugel, like who you thought were promising for a second and then just never got a chance. We signed Obi from Arsenal, so he's got to be given...
Still young.
Yeah.
He might be a loan next season in terms of his development pathway.
Yeah, but he should be around the first team squad, is what I'm saying. Like, you've signed him from another club for that. Give him a loan. He should have already been on loan now to be in the first team picture, because the next thing is JJ Gabriel. I know he's very young. I'm not talking about him in terms of next season, but what I'm talking about is the striker that you sign now in the summer is going to be of that sort of like gateway signing, because first of all, Sesko's of the young enough profile that he should be the striker long term. So you got Sesko in there, he's your number 9 for the next 6 years. That's the plan. And JJ Gabriel comes in and takes over.
Yeah, not pure striker Gabriel. I mean, he's played all over the shop.
No, he has, but I mean, by the time that he's breaking through, maybe he might be more of a 10 when he breaks through to the first team, because he's got so much individual talent. But I'm just talking theoretically, the number of strikers that United have got at the younger level who can score goals, that would appear to be the long-term plan. So you actually need someone who's in between there, who's an experienced striker. That it's so stupid as it sounds, and this is a bad example, but I mean like Igalo, who came in and did better than expected. Definitely, I mean someone of a much better profile than Igalo, but someone who you're not expecting to be the best striker in the world, but will end up being a much better surprise than you were expecting.
Yeah. Should have brought Danny Welbeck back.
Cavani's another great example of what I'm trying to make the point there. Someone who just comes in and does what he needs to do for a short period of time to bridge that gap, and turns out to be a much better player than what you're anticipating. Yeah, Welbeck would have been great.
He would have been a very sensible purchase, yeah. Rapid fire on a few others. Victor Pedro says, where does centre-back rank in terms of some necessity? I think if Harry's staying, which seems more likely than not, then that's 5 centre-backs. De Ligt, Harry, Lissandro Martinez, Aiden Heaven and Yoro. That seems enough to me. I mean, 3 of them are a bit injury-prone.
Yeah.
Which is a question, and then 2 of them are younger, but I think we've seen enough of Yoro and Heaven to say they've got something about them, both of them, right? They just need to develop. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's their concern, is the injury situation with those. You want to think long-term Yoro and Heaven, but that's such a long way because Martinez isn't at his prime. De Ligt's not meant to be at his prime yet, so you want to see those have their prime, and then you've got 2 to learn from them as well. The idea it was Ferdinand, Vidic, Jones and Smalling, right? And Evans, the continuity plan. That's what we should have here. Obviously, nowhere near as good as those, but who's saying that Yoro and Evan can't be? They are phenomenal talents. Yeah. And it almost seems like too many, but you want to see Heaven get game time as well. So.
PJ Thompson says, is Jimmy Thwaites the best prospect? I don't know if he's the best one. I love watching him play. There's such a big step up from 18s and 21s. It's almost like it's a completely different sport. Scored a phenomenal free kick the other day.
Oh, great.
Beckham put him in the wrong corner, and all of that is just beautiful. Love it. I mean, his range of passing, his movement, he's got some skulls about him. Ball striking's great. So he's a great prospect. You never know. We've had so many great prospects. We really, really, really believed we're going to make it.
Yeah.
And don't. Another former United Academy player, Largi Ramzani. Did you see his goal for Valencia at the weekend?
No.
Go check it out if you haven't seen it. I mean, I'm not sure I ever thought he was going to make it at United, but he's taken the road less travelled. He went and played in Holland, didn't he? And then he's ended up at Valencia. He did a Dorgu. Let's just say that. It was a fantastic strike. All right. Jack Bauer says, would you rather Kobbie Mainoo goes to the World Cup with England, Shea Lacey scores a winning goal at some point this season? I mean, they're not related, but would you rather?
Shea only because I don't care about England, really. I care about Kobbie. Kobbie would want to get there for England, and for that purpose, that would be great. But you're asking me the question, I would be much higher up on Shea Lacey scoring a winning goal for United.
Yeah, I think after the season Kobbie's had, he deserves to go to the World Cup. So I'll pick that one just because. But I'd love to see Shea Lacey score a winning goal, but his time will come. Tuchel said some very nice things about Kobbie Mainoo in the last week.
Yeah.
Very much the suggestion that he will go to the World Cup now, and potentially Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw as well. He praised both of them. Last squad, he picked 7 midfielders, and one of them was Jordan Henderson. I see no value, other than experience, because it's a group of fairly young Midfielders, I don't see any value. He's just not playing very well. So, you know, what is the point? Anyway, just an excuse to have a go at Jordan Henderson and his funny running style. Fergie was always right about that one. All right, Casey Rolfe says, what's the most damaging post-Fergie match? Most damaging? Man, I mean, financially, it was Europa League final last season.
Yeah.
£100 million, that one. I don't know. There's been some big ones.
Yeah, so, yeah, and we've got plenty to pick from. So I think the lowest point might be like statistically speaking, would be Grimsby, because that's the anchor in terms of
how many places below us were they in the pyramid?
Exactly.
70 something.
This is what I mean. That's theoretically that's got to be the lowest, because that's the worst team to beat us. I mean, we toss a coin over losing 7-0 or 5-0 to Liverpool. I think for me, the 7-0 was more farcical because we were in the game at half time. The 5-0 was everything it was supposed to be, right? In terms of like, if you're going to lose 5-0 and they want to win 5-0 against you, that would be the way that they would want to do it. That would be one of the biggest and best results in their history. And these are the things around which rivalries are built. And we, at that point, we'd had a couple of dodgy results under Ollie, but I was still believing, I still wanted to believe, and I loved Ollie. So to lose, to be 4-0 down, for it to be the result of a ridiculous game plan, which was playing out from the back, which emphasised our weaknesses and their strengths. You can tell that it still weighs on my mind a lot, so I can remember every excruciating
new book coming in
second of
United's
being
worst defeats
on that row by myself. Well, me and my wife, the last people on our row for the last half an hour, because everyone else had gone, because I can't bring myself to leave, even when that's happening. So the excruciating experience of that, being 4-0 down at half-time, being 5-0 down straight after half-time, and then knowing the rest of it, they were taking the mick, that it could have been 8 or 9 or 10 if they'd had wanted it to be. Knowing that Solskjaer was going to get sacked because no one was going to survive that. It was just a matter of when that was going to happen. Knowing that he was a favourite player of yours and that you really strongly believed in the positive momentum that had been, because I still believed in the positive momentum that was there from Ronaldo's return. He'd scored against Newcastle. We got the last minute winner against Villarreal. Everything felt like it was coming as it was supposed to go, and it unravelled so quickly to a point where there was no, like I'm speaking earlier, like there was just no way of defending what was happening. So I knew that I couldn't put up an argument for him to be kept, other than that we'd made good progress in the months before, but it was all falling apart. That's the worst. For me, it's the worst because there's the significance of the result, the size of the result, the identity of the opponent, the catalytical point it was for change after that. Everything about it, and to be there, Ed, was just the pits. And I was there for 6-1 City, by the way.
Yeah.
And this was bad. It was so bad, because it wasn't even like he's gonna. It could have been sacked the day after, but it lasted a few more weeks after that, and it was just, you knew it wasn't gonna.
Knew it was coming.
Fixed. Yeah. It was terrible. I can't think of another time that it was as bad as that.
I have never left a football game early. Can't bring myself to do it. All right, we're going to close out with some silliness. Tarek Amir, friend of the show, says, which Pokemon would you sign? Happy Chinese New Year. Cantona, born in the year of the horse. I think I was born in the year... rabbit? I think I might be a rabbit. I can't remember. I was talking with my kids were doing a project at school, or the younger one was, and he was going on about it, and now I forget. I don't know. I don't follow Pokemon. Pikachu? That's the only one I can think of.
I saw the question. I was like, what do I know from Pokemon? I know Pikachu. I know Ash.
Oh, yeah, Ash.
He's the collector, or the main character, the boy in there. And I do know Charizard, because people talk about the rare collector's cards, and that was always meant to be a rare one. But apart from that, I don't know the answer, Tariq. So what I will say is Pikachu, because that's what I know. Yeah.
I was forced to watch that film a few times as well. Not great. Chris Etchingham says, would Ed's hair be an afro or waist length if United had to win 5 in a row before cutting it? My hair, when it gets long, is not good. It just goes up into this big bouffant thing. I just don't like it. So I've gone with short bed head since I was about 16 years old because it's the only way I can cope. We were talking about whether if you grew your hair out until we made it to 5 wins, whether you'd have to do a comb over or not. Would you go full Bobby Charlton?
I think at this point, without knowing, because I used to, it was really long. My hair was like grungy Kurt Cobain length. Like it really was. That's how I used to have it in my 20s. But I think it would probably be late 20s Bobby Charlton. Oh my God.
Brilliant. It's so good. AI is going to do that for me just so I can have a good chuckle. It's funny, I was looking at some photos from 2008 with my wife because that's when we met. And we went on, long story, went on a motorbike ride up the coast in California as our first date, as you do.
Nice.
I had a bit of widow's peak then, so I was like, it's actually, somehow I've managed to retain this hair. It can't be long before it starts falling out though, can it? Deary me. On that delightful note, we'll close it out here. Thanks everyone for your questions. Thank you as always, Wayne. If you want to back the show, you can find us on patreon.com/NQATpod or Apple Podcast subscriptions, or I do a Substack and I also comp you a subscription to the audio version as well. That all makes sense, sort of. I don't know. Catch Wayne on all the socials. If you want, I was a guest on The Trouble with Football this week talking about VAR because, I wanted an original moan about football, clearly. We'll see you shortly. Bye now.